Assalamu alaikum students, hope you all are fine. We have completed the gross anatomy of anterolateral abdominal wall, and today we are starting the contents of abdominal cavity. We will start with the structures related to gastrointestinal system, and the esophagus, only 1 centimeter of esophagus is present in the abdominal cavity, and you have studied the esophagus in detail in first year. So we will start with gross anatomy of stomach today. The stomach is the most dilated part of the gastrointestinal tract, positioned between abdominal esophagus and small intestine. The stomach lies in the left upper quadrant. We have studied the 4 quadrants of anterolateral abdominal wall and 9 regions. So the stomach is present in the left upper quadrant, and when we talk about regions, the stomach is located in the epigastric, left hypochondriac and umbilical regions of the abdomen. It tends to be high and transversely arranged in the short obese person when it is called Steinhorn stomach, and elongated vertically in the tall thin person when it is called J-shaped stomach. Its shape undergoes considerable variation in the same person, and it depends on the volume of its contents, the position of the body and the phase of respiration. First of all, we will see the external features of the stomach. So stomach has 2 openings which are called orifices. These 2 openings is cardiac orifice, where esophagus opens into stomach, and it is usually situated to the left of midline behind 7th costal cartilage at the level of 11th thoracic vertebra. So this is cardiac orifice. The other one is pyloric orifice at the junction of stomach with duodenum. The pyloric orifice is located at the level of first lumbar vertebra, that is transpyloric plane, and it lies in this position when the body is supine and the stomach is empty, and it lies 1 to 2 centimeter right to midline in the transpyloric plane. The pyloric opening is marked by circular pyloric constriction, where this part joins the duodenum, where pyloric orifice joins the duodenum. This part is marked on the surface by pyloric constriction on the surface of stomach, which indicates the location of pyloric sphincter. And remember that vein called pre-pyloric vein crosses this on anterior surface, and because this vein is obvious in living person, it helps surgeons to identify the pylorus. So with the help of pre-pyloric vein, they can identify the location of pylorus. Stomach has 2 borders, the right border which is called lesser curvature and left border which is called greater curvature. Lesser curvature starts from cardiac opening up to pyloric opening. It is marked by a constant indentation that is called angular incisure. The left border is called greater curvature. It starts at cardiac notch and extends up to pyloric opening. The stomach has 2 surfaces, the anterior surface and the other one is posterior surface. Stomach is divided into 4 regions by some artificial lines drawn on its external surface. The first line which we will draw is from this cardiac notch towards greater curvature. This line, this horizontal line, which from the cardiac notch to greater curvature. The second line we will draw from this angular incisure, which is indentation, constant indentation present along lesser curvature, again towards greater curvature, right? And sometimes there an inconstant groove is present which is called sulcus intermedius, which draws the third line. So with the help of these lines, artificial lines, we divide the stomach into different parts. The first part is fundus. Fundus is dome shaped and it projects above and to left of the esophagus, and it lies in contact with left dome of diaphragm, and it lies above this horizontal line I have just discussed from the cardiac notch towards greater curvature. So this part is called fundus of stomach. And cardiac notch, which lies between the esophagus and fundus. The fundus is filled with gas, fluid, food, or any combination of these. The next part of the stomach is called body. When we draw a line from this cardiac notch towards a greater curvature and the second line from angular incisor to greater curvature, this area is called body, which is major part of the stomach. The part of the body lying near to esophageal opening or cardiac opening, this part is called cardia. The next is pyloric part, which is funnel shaped outflow region of the stomach. The pyloric part is further divided into two parts. The wider part, this part is called pyloric antrum, while the tubular part is called pyloric canal. The pyloric antrum extends up to where the stomach narrows and become tubular and called pyloric canal. Between these two lines, one is from angular incisor to greater curvature, and sometimes there is an inconstant sulcus, which is called sulcus intermedius, is present on external surface, which marks the junction of pyloric antrum to pyloric canal. Pyloric canal is 1 to 2 centimeter long. Pyloric canal is narrow and tubular and terminates at the pylorus. Pylorus, Greek word which means gatekeeper. It is the distal sphincteric region of the pyloric part. We can see when the duodenum is open, we can see this pyloric orifice and the sphincter which is present here, and it is marked by a thickening of circular layer of a smooth muscle, and it actually controls the discharge of stomach contents through pyloric orifice. So this is called pylorus. This is again the summary of different regions of the stomach. By these three lines we have divided the stomach into fundus, body, pyloric antrum, pyloric canal. This is lesser curvature of the stomach, this whole is greater curvature of the stomach, and then angular incisor and sulcus intermedius, the location of cardiac and pyloric orifices. Now, relations of the stomach. Whenever you will mention the relations of any of the organ present in the abdominal cavity, first you will mention its peritoneal relations and then you will mention its visceral relations. So the stomach is completely surrounded by peritoneum except where blood vessels run along its curvatures, and in small area which lies posterior to cardiac orifice where there is no peritoneum. The peritoneal ligaments which are related to stomach you have studied in detail in previous class, but the ligaments related to stomach along lesser curvature, the attached to double layer of ligament is called lesser omentum, and the specific part between the stomach and liver is called hepatogastric ligament. Then along greater curvature, this one is greater omentum. Then reflection of peritoneum from stomach towards spleen, which is called gastrosplenic ligament, and then reflection from diaphragm, which is called gastrophrenic ligaments. So these are the peritoneal ligaments or folds which are related to stomach. Now visceral relations, as stomach has two surfaces, so anterior and posterior, so both are related to structures. The anteriorly the stomach is related to diaphragm, the left lobe of liver, transverse colon, and anterior abdominal wall. In this diagram we can see the areas of stomach related to liver, then transversus abdominis muscle, a diaphragm, and transverse colon. A diaphragm separates the stomach from left pleura, pericardium, and left lung and ribs from 6th to 9th ribs, as stomach lies under the cover of this costal margin. So it separates, the diaphragm separates it from 6th to 9th ribs, while these costal cartilages are separated from the stomach by the transversus abdominis muscle. Below the left lobe of liver, this area of the stomach is related to anterior abdominal wall, and this is the area where gastrostomy tube can be inserted when the patient can't take orally. Posterior relations of the stomach are very important. This is frequently asked question in SEQ. Give the structures from the bed of stomach or stomach bed. So posteriorly, please remember, immediately posterior to stomach there is lesser sac. First of all, you will mention lesser sac in posterior relations of the stomach, and the bed of the stomach on which the stomach rests in supine position is formed by structures forming posterior wall of lesser sac. So remember, immediately posterior to stomach there is lesser sac, and then behind the posterior wall of lesser sac we have the structures which form bed of the stomach. You have to memorize these structures. These structures are left crus and lower fibers of the diaphragm, left side of the diaphragm, then inferior phrenic vessels, the left inferior phrenic vessels, then spleen, upper pole of left kidney, left suprarenal gland, splenic artery, very important, splenic artery, pancreas, and transverse mesocolon. This line, blue line, shows the origin of transverse mesocolon, this part. So behind the stomach in the background we can see these structures which form the stomach bed. After external features, now we will see the internal features of the stomach. The smooth surface of gastric mucosa is reddish brown during life, except in the pyloric part where it is pink. When the stomach is empty, the mucosa of stomach is thrown into folds. These folds are called gastric folds or gastric rugae. They are most marked toward the pyloric part and along the greater curvature of the stomach. Along lesser curvature of the stomach, these gastric folds are arranged longitudinally, and due to this arrangement a temporary groove or furrow-like canal is produced along lesser curvature, which is called gastric canal or Megenstrasse. It is formed along this lesser curvature, and it can be observed radiographically and endoscopically. The gastric canal forms because of the firm attachment of gastric mucosa to the muscular layer, and which does not have an oblique layer at this site. The saliva, small quantities of masticated food, but mainly liquids, they pass along this pathway through this gastric canal when they enter the stomach, and they pass along to reach the pyloric opening. The next is blood supply. Again, very important topic in gross anatomy of stomach is blood supply. When you say blood supply, it means arterial as well as venous drainage. The rich arterial supply of the stomach arises mainly from celiac trunk and its branches. You all know the celiac trunk is the branch arises from abdominal aorta, and most blood to the stomach comes from celiac trunk. The arteries have a specific arrangement along lesser and greater curvatures of the stomach. So the stomach is supplied along lesser curvature by two arteries, the left and right gastric arteries, and along greater curvature by the right and left gastroepiploic or gastroomental arteries. The gastroepiploic arteries are also called gastroomental arteries. So these arteries along lesser and greater curvature, the right and left arteries, they anastomose with each other and give branches which supply the stomach along both curvatures. Then the fundus and upper part of the body is supplied by short gastric arteries. The left gastric artery arises directly from the celiac trunk. This one is celiac trunk, this is left gastric artery. The right gastric artery arises from hepatic artery proper. From hepatic artery there is a branch that is called gastroduodenal artery, and then it gives the other branches. And the right gastroepiploic artery arises from this gastroduodenal artery, while the left gastroepiploic artery and short gastric arteries, these are branches of splenic arteries. You have already studied the major vessels of the gut. Veins of the stomach follow the arteries in position and course, and ultimately these veins drain into portal vein. Now, in the abdominal cavity, there are two parallel venous systems. One is a vena cava system through inferior vena cava and systemic veins, and other is a portal vein which drain whole of the gastrointestinal tract. We will study the portal vein in detail, but right now the veins of the stomach, like right and left gastric veins along lesser curvature, and the right and left gastroepiploic veins along greater curvature, and then short gastric veins, these drain ultimately into hepatic portal vein. Right and left gastric veins drain directly into hepatic portal vein, while short gastric veins and left gastroepiploic vein drain into splenic vein, and right gastroepiploic vein empties in the superior mesenteric vein. The superior mesenteric vein joins the splenic vein and form hepatic portal vein. Nerve supply of all of the abdominal viscera is through autonomic nervous system, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves. The sympathetic nerve supply of the stomach comes from T6 to T9 segments of the spinal cord. They will move to celiac plexus through greater splanchnic nerve, and then it is distributed through plexus around gastric and gastroepiploic arteries. The branches from celiac plexus, they move around these vessels to reach the stomach. So the segments, please remember these segments, T6 to T9 segments of the spinal cord. Sympathetic activity causes vasoconstriction. It inhibits gastric motility and constricts the pylorus. And afferent sensory pathways, especially pain, the pain fibers travel along sympathetic nerves. Please remember, the pain fibers from the stomach, they travel along sympathetic nerves. While parasympathetic nerve supply of the stomach is from anterior and posterior vagal trunks and their branches, which enter the abdomen through esophageal hiatus. The parasympathetic vagal fibers give branches to various branches to stomach, like anterior gastric nerves, posterior gastric nerves, then pyloric nerves, the pyloric branches, celiac nerves. These nerves supply the stomach with parasympathetic supply. These parasympathetic supply are secretomotor to gastric glands and motor to muscular wall of the stomach. The pyloric sphincter receives motor fibers from the sympathetic system and inhibitory fibers from the vagus nerve. Lymphatic drainage of the stomach. To understand the lymphatic drainage, we have to draw a line parallel to greater curvature. This line parallel to greater curvature and 2/3 of the way down the interior surface of the stomach. This line divides the stomach into 4 lymphatic territories, and this line indicates a watershed. So largest zone above and right to this line, lymph passes to right and left, mainly left gastric lymph nodes. The area on the left upper part, this upper left quadrant, this will drain into pancreatico-splenic nodes either directly or through gastroepiploic nodes along the pancreatico-splenic nodes are present along the splenic artery. Then the area from rest of the greater curvature region, that is lower part of left 1/3, it will drain into gastroepiploic nodes along gastroepiploic vessels, while the pyloric part of the stomach drain in various direction. It may go directly to hepatic nodes in porta hepatis, or to subpyloric lymph nodes, or to right gastric lymph nodes, but ultimately whole of the lymphatic drainage reach to celiac lymph nodes. When we talk about the pain sensation related to viscera, it is only poorly localized and refer to some region on anterolateral abdominal wall. The pain from the foregut derivatives is referred to epigastric region on the anterolateral abdominal wall. The sensation of pain in the stomach is caused by stretching or spasmodic contraction of smooth muscle in its wall, and it is referred to epigastrium. Why? Because the stomach is supplied by segments T6 to T9 of spinal cord. We have just seen in the nerve supply of stomach. So these segments also supply the anterior abdominal wall in the epigastric region. Due to the same nerve supply, it is believed that the pain transmitting fibers leave the stomach, accompany the sympathetic nerves, and these nerves pass through celiac ganglia and reach the spinal cord via greater splanchnic nerves, and then the spinal nerves through same segments supply the T6 to T9 dermatomes of anterior abdominal wall, which include the region of epigastrium. So pain from the stomach is referred to epigastrium. Now a few of the important clinical correlates of stomach. The first one is a gastric ulcer, a very common clinical condition. Different terminologies are used. The term peptic ulcer, when we use the term peptic ulcer, it means lesions of mucosa of the stomach, duodenum, or lower end of esophagus. These are called peptic ulcers, while gastric ulcers are open lesions of mucosa of the stomach. Now most ulcers of the stomach and the duodenum are associated with an infection by a specific bacterium called Helicobacter pylori. There are some other predisposing factors also. The common site for gastric ulcer is along lesser curvature, and we have just studied the presence of longitudinal folds, the gastric canal along lesser curvature, and how the fluids directly passes toward the pyloric end through this gastric canal. This predispose this lesser curvature to ulcers. The ulcers have several complications if it persists for a long time. Like if an ulcer erodes into gastric arteries nearby, like right and left gastric arteries, it can cause severe life-threatening bleeding. Chronic ulcer invade the muscular cords and in times involves the peritoneum so that the stomach adheres to neighboring structures. Then if an ulcer is situated on the posterior wall of the stomach, it may perforate into lesser sac or become adherent to pancreas, which is present in the stomach bed. And erosion of pancreas then produces pain referred to back. Then another very important structure, the vessel, which is splenic artery, which runs along upper border of the pancreas, and erosion of this artery may produce fatal hemorrhage. The frequently asked question in MCQs, that erosion of which vessel will lead into fatal hemorrhage. The answer is splenic artery. Then penetrating ulcer of the interior stomach wall may result in escape of contents into greater sac. Please remember, perforation of interior wall will lead to escape of contents into greater sac and cause diffuse peritonitis, while perforation of posterior wall will lead to escape of contents into lesser sac. Now, because the secretion of acid by parietal cells of the stomach is controlled by vagus nerve, so selective vagotomy, that is surgical section of the branches of vagus nerve, can be performed in some people with chronic or recurring ulcers to reduce the production of acid. And remember, the pain from gastric ulcer is referred to epigastric region. The next is carcinoma of the stomach. Carcinoma of the stomach is a common gastrointestinal malignancy. The predisposing factors which lead to carcinoma are chronic gastric inflammation, that is gastritis, pernicious anemia, polyps. These are few of the factors which are predisposing factors for carcinoma. The symptoms include a vague epigastric pain, then early fullness with eating, but the most common symptom is upper GI bleed, which leads to chronic anemia, and sometimes it presents with obstruction. The diagnosis may be made using barium studies or conventional radiology or endoscopy with biopsy. Because lymphatic vessels of mucous membrane and submucosa of the stomach are in continuity, it is possible for cancer cells to travel to different parts of the stomach some distance away from the primary site. Sometimes cancer cells bypass the local lymph nodes and are held up in regional nodes. Metastasis may occur through thoracic duct into left supraclavicular lymph nodes, that is called a Trousers sign. If carcinoma of the stomach is diagnosed early, curative surgical resection is possible. However, most patients do not seek treatment until late in the disease. Gastroscopy is the viewing of mucous membrane of stomach through an illuminated tube fitted with lens system. The gastroscope is passed into stomach, and with help of this, direct visualization of different parts of the gastric mucous membrane is possible, and a biopsy can also be performed during this procedure. The next is nasogastric intubation, which is common procedure which is performed to empty the stomach, to decompress the stomach in cases of intestinal obstruction or before operations on the gastrointestinal tract. It may also be performed to obtain a sample of gastric juice for biochemical analysis, and it is also used for feeding. The nasogastric tube is passed through nasal route and then it will enter the stomach. The next is barium studies. In barium studies is a radiographic examination of the gastrointestinal tract. It involves a swallowing of liquid contrast called barium sulfate. This barium sulfate coats the lining of esophagus, stomach and small intestine, so it can be seen on X-rays. The barium X-rays, also called upper and lower GI series, are used to diagnose abnormalities of the GI tract such as tumors, ulcers and other inflammatory conditions, polyps, hernias as well as strictures. The last is a gastrectomy, that means a removal of stomach. Two terms are used: total gastrectomy, that is removal of the entire stomach, this is uncommon, and partial gastrectomy, removal of part of the stomach. It may be performed to remove a region of the stomach involved by the carcinoma. So that's all for today. Thank you so much.